Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Israel Connection. I'm Esti Zenati. And my guest today has been my very first guest in the very beginning when we started the podcast. But we never really delved into who she is in real life and everything that she does at Bethel and in general in the Jewish world. So I'm proud to present again Rabbi Dana Saroken. Hi, Rabbi.
Hey, Esti.
Thank you for joining me today.
It is my privilege. You're doing such great work, Esti. Thank you for all that you're doing. Truly, since October 7th, you have been throwing your heart and your soul into being a bridge builder and creator between our two countries that so desperately need each other right now.
Yeah.
And we're really so grateful.
Well, thank you. And thank you for everything that you've been doing. You've been doing some amazing work, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. So let me introduce you first to those who don't know who you are, which is probably like 5 people. So Rabbi Dana Saroken has been a rabbi at Bethel since 2007, when she became the first congregation's female rabbi. And she is also the founder and spiritual director of the Soul Center, which is an amazing center. And Rabbi, you can share about this in a little bit. And Rabbi holds a prestigious Schusterman Fellowship and was honored as one of Jewish Women's International's 10 Women to Watch. And most importantly, she is the mother of 3 incredible young adults who are really brilliant.
Thank God.
Yes. So Rabbi, let's talk about your story. You're in the beginning. What led you to become a rabbi? And did you ever imagine yourself in that role when you were younger?
Sure. So the answer for of sort of, did I imagine myself in that role when I was younger? No, I really didn't. I wanted to become a doctor. But it's funny. I wanted to become a doctor because I wanted to help people and to do something that felt meaningful and supporting people through, both good times and difficult times, and to be in that relationship. And I think in some ways, like, even though a rabbi is so much different than a doctor, first of all, I'm really not good with blood. And I tried it, Esti. Like when I was in high school and college, I worked in Westchester, New York, in a hospital. First as a candy striper, which is, I don't even know if they have candy strippers anymore, but they're like volunteers that basically bring cheer and snacks and different things to patients. But then also I worked one summer as a doctor-patient liaison. So my job was really to update families that were in the waiting room about what was happening to their loved one, which I thought was a really important job. And I was really good at talking to people, but when it came to talking about like sort of the gory and bloody nature of things, I would find myself like in the bathroom a lot trying to take deep breaths. Like I really yeah. So anyway, I think in some ways becoming a rabbi was really actually enabled me to do the very thing. It's almost like a doctor for the soul or for the spirit.
Yeah.
Really good. And also it enables me to do, I think Judaism for me was definitely a journey. And as I evolved and became more observant, what I really found was that it was life-changing. And so that thing that I love, more than anything in the world, it's a beautiful opportunity for me to get to share it. So when I was graduating from college, I was a political science and Judaic studies major. And one of the things that I did was there was this book. I don't know if people still use it, but it's been around for a really long time. It's called What Color is Your Parachute?
Oh, okay.
And it basically has, it's a really, really thick book, and it helps you through exercises figure out what you want to do with your life. And one of the exercises that I did was an exercise that it says, like, sort of like make a list of all the things that that you love, and then skills that you find like fulfilling to use, and times in your life that were meaningful, etc. And when I made a list of all the things that I loved, that led me to my first job, and that led me to basically like my career from that. So I love being with people. I love sharing my Judaism, or our Judaism. I love building community.
Mhm.
I like creatively thinking and programming. I like counseling, and it's sort of like the best of everything all wrapped up into one.
That's amazing. Like growing up in Israel, like a rabbi for me, like, in Israel would be a man, normally Orthodox, you know, not someone I would approach to with life problems or, things like that. But
Yeah.
like ever since I got to Bethel and I got to talk to you and to Rabbi Schwartz, it's a whole different world. I feel like it's like therapy. It's basically like going to therapy.
With a Jewish twist and a
Yeah,
God's
with a Jewish twist.
Yeah.
But it is very comforting to speak to a rabbi and someone that has that thing in them, that can help you and listen and give you good advice. So that's great.
I love that. And it's funny, Esti, but I remember now, like sort of like looking back and smiling when you said that. The first time I went to one of the first times I went to do a funeral, and I think I was in rabbinical school still, and someone had asked at the synagogue that I worked at if I would come do a funeral. Actually, it was definitely during rabbinical school, and I showed up, and here I was like driving my car, and I was pregnant with Gideon, and I was sort of like doing that, like I was very I was you could definitely see a lot of baby when I
Oh,
and I remember sort of like waddling out of my car, and the guy in the parking lot was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you whatever," and I was like, "Oh, I'm the rabbi," and he like you could tell he just didn't even know what to say. Like,
yeah.
it was like one of those. It actually happened to me once before that. I was in my first year of rabbinical school, and I was co-officiating at one of my best friend's weddings. And it was like me and what you typically think of as a rabbi. It was like a 75-year-old bearded man. We were both standing under the chuppah together. And I was actually sort of like the primary rabbi on that. And he was like a secondary. And the videographer was like, "Excuse me, ma'am, could you just move over?" So, and I was like,
My
"Oh,
God.
yes, 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 I totally can, but they won't get married." Like that's the option. I'm the rabbi.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's funny though. The
It's
whole
good. It's amazing though. I think it's great. I mean, it's amazing that we have a woman rabbi, and I think as a woman, it makes me more comfortable to talk to someone about, like, if I want, if for a personal problem, I see myself going to you more rather than a male rabbi. I feel like it's, you understand me more as a woman, so it makes it a lot easier. It's amazing, and you're so good at it too. So. So how do you find ways to make Judaism feel relevant and alive for people of all ages? Because that seems to be like a very delicate balance, and it
yeah,
changes obviously.
yeah. Gosh, Esty, I think in some ways, one of the things that I'm really aware of over, the decades of my rabbinate, this is like my 20th year, is that there's sort of been an evolution, but I don't know that it's distinct for this moment in time. I actually think that in some ways, like our world just keeps changing and people's needs keep changing. And I think that that's one of the things that I really enjoy most. And I feel like it's one of the things that um, I have like a keen sense of, which is like, how do you watch people and sort of listen to people and understand who they are, where they're at in their life, what they need, what they yearn for, and sometimes even try to anticipate
Mhm.
the needs of any given time. And I think it just changes so much. I was reading an article last week in the New York Times, and it was about religion and sort of like this journey of people, from religion and to religion. And one of the things that it was saying, and I definitely have seen that this is true, is that there was a while where like there were a lot of there were a lot of articles wherever you look in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, about people leaving church. And by the way, it's interesting because when you see like articles about people leaving church, in some ways you're like, oh, that doesn't affect me, but it actually does affect us because, when people are leaving church, they might also be leaving synagogue or be
Right.
leaving, their religious institutions of any sorts. It's sort of sort of a question about society and where people are. I remember when my kids were really young, we drove downtown Baltimore and there were a whole bunch of dilapidated, buildings that we were driving through. And I don't know why I did it. I don't remember that, but I had them look out the window and I said, one of the things that's really interesting is that when you have, areas like this, you will see more churches
Mm-hmm.
than you will in like fancier areas. Like
Right.
there's just more of a need for God. There's more of a desire or a yearning for community and gathering, but also like even more so is that like when times are bad, we tend to, or when times are difficult, we tend to feel a need for God, that when times are great,
Right.
we sort of just carry on. And in some ways, you're more inclined to forget about God or to not reach out to God because like things are good. So that's sort of easy. But one of the things, like back to your question, that we've seen over the years is that we sort of had this prolonged space where people were actually leaving church, and there were a whole bunch of articles that were written in that time about sort of predicting the end of different religious communities and religious life, et cetera. And then we had the pandemic,
Yeah.
and that deeply impacted people's,
Mm.
sense of spirituality and religion.
In a way
For
that they like kind of backed out even more, or were they
no,
kind of
actually,
closer?
yeah, actually the opposite. One of the things that we saw before the pandemic was that that was where we had a lot of spiritual nuns,
Mm-hmm.
NONES, and you had a lot of people that were saying they were spiritual but not religious. And so you sort of saw people leaving traditional religious institutions and going towards spirituality. Then what ended up happening is that you had the pandemic and people were like, oh my gosh, we actually need each other. And navigating life out of relationship or all on our own feels hard and scary, and I feel vulnerable. And so people started to really sort of crave community. And that could be people that were spiritually inclined or not, no longer really, or maybe never religiously inclined, but they were like trying to figure out. And then all of a sudden you have a pandemic where you feel vulnerable and you have like this thing called, COVID-19
Yeah.
that you like is somehow, sort of, bursting through society and literally like taking lives or endangering lives. And all of a sudden you're like, it's something that I can't even see that's so strong and so
Right.
powerful.
That's
And
scary.
yeah. And then all of a sudden you're like, there must be, something greater than what my eyes can see and my ears can
Mm.
hear. And people, I think, all of a sudden were, not instantly turning to God, but there was sort of like this opening in people's lives for God and for religion and for community that there really hadn't been before. And I think now what we're seeing is that, both as a combination of a post-pandemic world where people recognize that we need each other, both
Mm.
what they call like strong relationships and what authors and thinkers are talking about is like weaker ties, but still important, right? Like one of the things that we realized during the pandemic was that those weaker ties are actually super important.
Yeah.
Like my relationship with my mail person, Tammy, my relationship with the person at Dunkin' Donuts drive-through window, who was maybe the only person that I actually saw up close in my day-to-day life in the pandemic in real life, right? Like these are people that you may not have valued as much before, but the person at Trader Joe's who checks you out all of a sudden in the pandemic, like that was a really important person in your life.
Yes. Mhm.
And so I think that there was more of awareness that like community matters. To get to what you were saying though, then sort of like, then you add in for the Jewish people, October 7th. And all
Mhm.
of a sudden, when you're adding in October 7th, again, we're sort of seeing or experiencing, I think, in the world today, many people that are saying, like, actually, Judaism matters to me, or being Jewish matters. Or, by the way, you know, whether or not whether or not I'm coming, back to community for good reasons or for difficult reasons, like these are my people. Like these are the people right now when the world is getting aggressive and like accusatory, right? Like then I can come and gather with my Jewish people and like we understand each other, right? We actually, in many ways, this is a lesson that our older generations knew quite well, but our younger generations had never had to experience the sense of like, actually, we need each other. We need each other here in America as Jews, especially when you look in the campuses in some of the cities. And we certainly need each other as a world Jewish community because these days have been very, very difficult. And I think that brings people in. So back to your original question, which is like, how do you program for different people in different states of their lives? Like, I actually think that's like one of the most fun sort of like, sort of strategic thinking exercises that I do and we do as a team often, right? That right now in this moment of time, the little kids we need to like, I mean, I think when kids are very young, that's the most important and beautiful time to give them a sense of God.
Yeah.
Right. When kids are really little in the time where they're, playing imagination games and, thinking about things that as adults we start to get sort of skeptical of, right? Like kids don't have any heart, they don't have a problem thinking of angels and princesses and all of those, other things.
All the fairy tales.
Giving them a sense of God is super important. Like lie down with the kids in the grass and like, wow, can you like do a lot of wow?
Yeah.
Your kids are young, right? Wow. Like, can you believe that God made these clouds just for us? Like you look at the ocean on a Bethany trip or when you're going over the bridge and you say like, wow, can you believe that like that God makes this, like that God created these waters and that God separated the waters and the land and the sea, like sort of trying to like just bring God into life. And I think that that's also at a young age, a really nice time to talk to God, to teach kids about prayer, to incorporate like a Moda Ani prayer, saying like, thank you, God, when you wake up. And then like, at the end of the night saying the Shema, or like I forgive anyone who hurt me, let anyone who's hurt me also be forgiven, send down the angels, right? Like these things are sort of anchors of the day that we can give to our kids really young. When our kids start to get older, we want to teach them the Torah stories, right? We want to teach them the stories of our tradition, but we want to frame them in such a way and give them context in such a way that what they understand is that like this is the oldest diary imaginable, right? This is thousands of years old. We have a diary. And by the way, that's a nice time to say, like, do you want to start a diary? Do you want to keep your memories? Do you want to, right? There's like nice parts of that. But I think that that's where we really want to start to tell them the stories of our people, because one of the things that we know, and study after study have been like this and proving this to be true, is that that when kids know their family's story, they actually have a higher level of self-esteem, self-worth, and more resilience and grit than anyone else, because you're grounded in a story that's bigger than your own. And so, there have been studies that have shown that like when you know how your parents met, where your parents went to school, what your grandparents did, right? Like those stories that connect you to that bigger, family narrative, that you just fare better in the world. And I think in some ways, like what an incredible thing as our kids are young to give them, this sense of like, okay, all the way back to the beginning of our family, there was Abraham and Sarah, and let them know those ancestors in the same way that they would know great grandparents or great great grandparents. As our kids get to be teenagers nowadays, I think what we're really working on at the shul, and you've been a part of that, and Cantor Emily's been a part of that, and there's been a whole team of people that have been a part of this, is that we're trying to teach them about Israel.
Yes.
And the relationship between the Jewish people and Israel. We're trying to we've switched some things in our curriculum, or in the process of switching, so that now we're going to actually, as of this upcoming February, be taking all of our middle school kids and one parent to Israel.
That's
And
amazing. Yeah.
it's amazing. And the reason that we flip-flopped it is that we used to do it at the end of high school, but we really do believe that that's too early. I'm sorry, that's
Too
too
late.
late, that we
Yeah.
need to get them earlier because, as you know, the world is a crazy place right now in terms of the mistruths that they're telling about Israel. And we want our kids to know about Israel, through their own eyes and through our own narrative, and not to be
Mhm.
told what Israel is or isn't by Qatar or Iran or
Yeah.
China or TikTok. So that becomes really important. And then, of course, we sort of keep going. One of the things, Esti, that I think is super interesting is that, like, we've been so blessed here in Baltimore, but especially at Bethel, we have really strong Zionists. And one of the things that's amazing this summer is that we just filled up, and we actually just got the, like, you can't add more notice, but we're bringing 18 of our millennial moms to Israel.
Yes, and I wish I could join that trip.
I know, I wish you could too. But that's pretty spectacular, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
just this idea in a world where, like, where people are sort of inclined to say, like, Israel is complicated, that we filled up a trip in the midst of a war
Right.
of people that are in their mid 30s with little kids, and they're all courageously and, like, enthusiastically, like, taking time out of their lives to go to Israel and to be in Israel and to learn and to grow. So I think that that's also really exciting. And there's just so much we could do with people of every age, literally every age, from 1 to 105. Like,
Yeah.
there's no end to the impact that Judaism can have on one's life in helping us grow, stay purpose driven, stay fulfilled, stay, connected. It's such a beautiful gift. So, I think some of it, back to your, like, question, is just, any given moment of time, sort of responding to the needs and anticipating them. I think that that's the key to what enables us to thrive.
Yeah. I think it's amazing that, some of the hostages that were released and their families said that throughout the time in captivity, they got closer to God. They got closer to Judaism. They started
I know.
praying. They started, you know, doing all these things while in captivity, while being tortured.
I know.
And it gave them hope. It kept them going. And then on the other side, you see those college students, Jewish college students, who go against everything they ever learned because their parents sent them to Hebrew school and they were mad about this, and go against Israel and against the Jewish people. Like, that's very, very, like, you know, contradicting, like, realities. Like, what do you think? Like, why do you think it happens? Like, how it happens?
Yeah. It's such an interesting question, Esty. First of all, I will say, I do think that there's 3 battlefields that we're fighting on right now. The first is in Israel, and Israel, and I'll say, like, the surrounding areas of the Middle
Yeah.
East, sort of like that, you know, physical battlefield, if you will, for existence and safety and all of those other things, and protection for the people of Israel. The second battlefield, I think, has been our college campuses.
Mm-hmm.
And the third is social media, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've actually, it's funny that you asked me of this in this moment of time, because I was just talking to my kids this past week,
Mm-hmm.
and I have been really encouraging them to do a podcast and then write a book. I really want, I want to know the story of the kids on campuses that are fighting this fight with such perseverance and courage and resilience. Like, I want to know who they are, and I want to know what, like, what inspires them, motivates them, and, like, what they all maybe share as commonalities.
Yeah.
Like, to your point, like, why are some kids out there tirelessly fighting, and other kids have sort of this, like, keep your head down, or, either, like, it might,
Worse than that.
or right, or join the encampment. And I think that like I read so much, about, sort of about all of these different pieces. And I know you follow like so magnificently, the hostage stories and everything else. I think that there are a lot of reasons that Jewish kids are in the encampments. First of all, I don't think that number is as great as we would think. I think that it's a smaller group of kids, which I also think is really important to remember. I think that there are organizations that are intentionally recruiting Jewish kids. JVP is coming to Baltimore soon. The Jewish
Oh my
Voices,
God.
that is actually not.
They're
It
not
is not
Jewish
primarily
even.
Jewish Voices. But I think that one of the things that they've done is they sort of recruit them, under the auspices of like, you can sort of just give up a little bit of your identity, right? Like in order to gain access to this group of people and acceptance and affirmation, all you have to do is, sort of initially condemn Israel,
Yeah.
or relinquish your Zionist identity or whatever it is. And then they ask more and more and more of you. And then, what I've been told is that then, there comes a time where there's a lot of discomfort around, like, we just started with that, but then like, what is happening? I think it was actually one of the interesting things that I'm thinking about with Coachella. There were people that came to just listen to music, and all of a sudden they're chanting horrible
it became
things.
a whole anti-Israel protest, chanting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So that's also interesting. Like, is it a little bit of a bait and switch? Is it a little bit of wishful and hopeful thinking? Like, I can get along with everyone, or I don't need to be aligned with, only the Jewish people. But I think that there's also sort of a tikkun olam element to it, which is like, I care about the well-being of all people. And I would say to that, like, I think it's a really beautiful value, and I think that we should be proud as Jews that we've raised kids and, and a community where we are concerned with a greater world. I think one of the challenges, that this has definitely sort of opened up, my eyes to, for sure, is that I think we have to teach chesed and be really good at that before we do tikkun olam, right? So I think of chesed as like how we take care of ourselves.
Yes.
Tikkun olam is like, and then how we take care of others. And it is great to love people and to love all people and to care for all people. But, it's also really important that you take care of your inner circle first. And that's really Maimonides, right? Says that there are like concentric circles that we are obligated to. And in some ways, I think, especially today, when you see that, there are a ton of people that are coming to help the Jewish people right now. By the way, yesterday was Yom HaShoah, and we also saw that then, the studies show that 0.003 people in Europe are righteous Gentiles.
Oh my God.
So, right. When
probably 0.001 now, but
yeah. Right,
it's
right. I mean, like, who even knows?
Yeah.
And I think that that's also interesting, right? Like, I think it was, well, both Putin interviewed Alex or Sasha Trufesky?
Trufano.
Okay.
Yeah, he went to Russia to meet him because he Putin kind of had a hand in his release in a way.
I mean, whatever. He was released after 500 and something days.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I only say that because as I'm reading the interview, I'm thinking to myself, should you read what he said?
Putin thanked Hamas.
Oh, yes.
For their cooperation. Like, what?
And by the way, not only did he do that, but he invited Hamas leadership to come out to Russia right after October 7th. And then when he was talking to Alex or Sasha, he said something along the lines of like, it was because of the relationship that we share with their leaders that we were able to do this for you. And I thought to myself, but again, Trump also, I think, was speaking. I don't know if it was to Eli Sharabi, or if it was someone else that he was speaking to, but one of the things also that emerged from that was he said something along the lines of like, well, were there good people there? Like, were there people there that like helped you? And he said, like it was in the Holocaust where there were people that like, there were people that did good things. Like, were there people that did good things? Sure. And the person who was like released from captivity was like, they hit us, right? Like, I mean,
civilians hit them. They cursed them. They did a lot. Yeah, they did a lot of stuff.
Abused them. And I think in some ways, I think that actually is one of the most, for me, I think it's a really fascinating thing about human nature is to look for the good. I mean, Mr. Rogers actually said that, right? Like, look for the helpers. And I think in some ways, like, that might be one of the ways that Jews and maybe even Americans sort of like maintain optimism in times where that feel dark, is that we do look for the good and look for the helpers. And that question was sort of it's hard for me to believe that human beings, wouldn't respond in ways that felt humane toward one another. And I think that that's one of the things that like those questions sort of drive at. We're like, okay, I understand that terrorists are bad and do evil things, but like regular people, like they're good. And I think like coming off of Yom HaShoah yesterday, I think sometimes you have to really reach to find, I don't want to say good people, but I'll say people that are willing to courageously do good things even when it's difficult.
Yes, people are willing to be there, to be on your side and support you, even if it's hard, and that's that. I talked to I interviewed Erin Mullen on the previous episode, and she's a great example for that, because she went out there on Sky News and defended Israel, defended the Jewish people, talked about Hamas as, she talked about them as terrorists, she talked about the bad things that they have done. And she was like all in your face, saying the truth as it is. And she received a ton of threats, death threats against her and her daughter. And it reached to a point that she had to, give her daughter's dad for a little bit to protect her. But even so, after all of this, she went on again and talked about it and was even more straightforward. And so that's incredible. Like, she would be a person that I would trust during the Holocaust to save someone,
Yeah.
So these are the type of people we need, but there's not a lot of people who are willing to be there in public, and just be courageous and speak up and, do the right thing. But we need more people like that, rather than the others that, instead of caring for everyone, they care only for the others, and they completely forget or throw their own people under the bus.
Yeah.
So
and it's also interesting, like just in the spirit of Dan L'Chaf like giving people the benefit of the doubt. Like, I also wonder right now, if there's apathy, ambivalence, if people are also just sort of preoccupied. Like, there's a lot going on in the world.
Yeah.
Do we misunderstand the quiet or the silence or the sort of absence of those gestures? Are we just, I don't know. I that might be hopeful of me, but I feel like I still want to have hope in people. Like I do. And yeah, it's really, it's an interesting thing, Esti. Did you see October 8th, the movie?
No, not yet, because I've seen parts of it, but yeah, I need to watch it. I feel like I've seen so many things. Yesterday I watched, by the way, which is something everybody needs to watch, The Children of October 7th. That is incredible. It's on Paramount Plus. It's a documentary done by Montana Tucker, and she interviews kids that were there. Some of them were kidnapped. Some of them lost their parents. So this is really important to watch. But I feel like I've watched like the whole October 8th, the theme of the film. I've watched it live all the time, constantly.
Actually, it's an interesting thing. And by the way, I got to meet Montana Tucker at the Anti-Defamation League's Never Is Now conference, and she's unbelievable and spectacular. But she also, as one of the clips, they showed some of her interviews from that, and it was unbelievable what she was
Mhm.
able to and willing to go do. I mean, she's really talk about people that have put themselves out there.
Yeah.
She's sort of been unabashed. And there have been others also. I think Deborah Messing has been
Yeah, she's
spectacular
been
for
incredible.
for eighth, but Sheryl Sandberg also, and we just need more and more and more. Um, One of the things I think that was really interesting about October 8th, the movie, and like you, I feel like, you know, I have been staying, up to date on all of these like campus issues, et cetera. I'm especially having, two kids, one in college, one going to college, but on a gap year in Israel, and then Maya, who's just applying to colleges. Um, is that like no matter how much you follow, the one thing is like sort of the experience of the aggregate of it, which they sort of were able to really make you feel in the movie,
Mhm.
is like it 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 is truly sort of inconceivable. It's in the movie. One of the things that's interesting is I think that the direction or the production was so precise in that it actually sort of made you feel as if you were there at those protests. And I think that that was
Mm.
really powerful. And it also introduced you to people like Noah Fay from Columbia University,
Mhm.
or,
Yeah.
you know, that have really been fighting this, this campus battle in ways that, felt, um, I mean, they gave me hope for the future. They really did. They really, really did. And I think the other question, you know, that, I think, one of the things that we need to ask is like, how do we get the non-Jewish community to go see some of these things?
Yes, that's what we need. I feel like the non-Jewish community has to go and see it to experience it, especially those people who, either support from like the background, like the sidelines and don't put themselves out there, or those who are completely silent.
Mm-hmm.
They have to go and watch these things and just try to understand more of what we've been going through.
It's an interesting thing. We had a friend, one of my dad's best friends came to visit us about a month ago, and I was reading the book October 7th,
Hmm.
which is like those very short stories of, I want to say, 40 heroes from October 7th. And I, I was running to shul for something, and I was like, here, read this, and she started to read it. And there's a story that I told her to start with on page 69, which is a
Hmm.
story of one of the heroes. He was a Bedouin Muslim man in Israeli, and he was a driver for a group of kids that were going to the Nova Festival. And he decided to go home that night. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, like his phone started to go sort of crazy, and his wife woke him up, and he was like, we're good. And then he saw something wasn't right. So he drove to the Nova Festival, and, um, he had to like jump off of the side of the road and jump into a ditch for a little while. But he was like, my name is Yosef. And he was like, I basically, it was his Esther moment. He was like, I'm not abandoning these kids. I
Yeah.
very much die today, but I'm not going to return home without them. And like he got to the Nova Festival scene, and the kids, they were able to find each other, and the kids jumped into his car, and he ended up putting like 30 kids in his minivan or something like that. It was unbelievable. And then creating this alternative route because he knew the area so well, and other people were following him. Like it was just an amazing story of heroism and rescue. But anyway, so Gina, my dad's best friend, was reading this, and she was sitting in, as I did too. Like you sit and you cry, but you're so inspired by the stories.
Hmm.
And I was thinking after that, because Gina wasn't Jewish, that maybe we need to be handing out the books, or we maybe need to be doing something, having I think we need different strategies in order to share our story, because as you and I sort of started by saying, there's a lot of storytelling going on in the world, and they're not
Yes.
really telling our story. And they're
Hmm.
not telling our story in a fair or just or particularly true way. So I think that's up to us now. And, look, I think the truth is that the Jewish people, like Jews have done, I mean, the unimaginable.
Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
From the creation of Hollywood to, you know, the creation of things like Facebook and Waze and all these other things. Like, if you put the Jewish, the Jewish people together, and you really somehow find a way to sort of use the best of our talent within our people, like, there's no way that I mean, I would bet on us, right? I feel like we could do anything if we were to do that, but right now I think we have to engage more people in the battles in these three battlegrounds,
Yeah.
and then keep at it, because we don't have the luxury of getting fatigued, and we don't have the luxury of keeping our heads down. Like, this is, I think, one of those moments in Jewish history that the storybooks you know will tell the stories of. And I
Mhm.
think we just need to be a part of, we have to be a part of the solution.
Yes, and I think that's what we're trying to do, like with all the documentaries out there and the books. So there's so many books related to October 7th, from the point of view of a survivor, from the point of view of a soldier that was there. We have someone coming to Bethel next weekend who was there and wrote a book about his experience as a soldier on the battlefield. So there's a lot out there, and we just need to get it to the right people, to get it to people that would are willing to listen, to watch, to read, and
Yeah. And Esti, I just want to come back to where we started, to say that, like, what you have been doing, you know, is is has been spectacular and incredibly important. That you're keeping the hostages, their stories, you're keeping, like, you're sort of keeping track of and repeatedly educating and re-educating people in our community. It really has made a huge difference. And I know that your listeners feel grateful, and we feel grateful. And I know that there is nothing that we can ask, when it comes to the relationship between the Jewish people and Israel, that would be too much for you. And we're so, so grateful for every tear you shed, every day and nighttime hour that you've given to this cause, and to really making sure that these stories are told and this connection is strong. So thank you.
well, it's my pleasure, and I feel like it's a natural thing. I think if we
Yeah,
don't do it, if we don't tell our story, nobody will,
I
and
agree.
we have to do it.
Mm.
So before we sum up, I have this little segment called my favorite Israeli thing. Yes. So who is your favorite Israeli real life superhero?
Oh my gosh. So I'm sorry, Essie, are we frozen our pictures?
No, we're
Oh,
good.
we're not. Okay. They're frozen on my screen, but I'm glad.
Well,
Okay. My real life Israeli superhero. Oh gosh. I mean, I have different superheroes all the time and each day, but lately, I'm feeling really grateful for Haviv Redding Gore.
mhm.
Um, I'm grateful for the work that he's doing between Israel and America. I'm grateful for his brilliance, which he is sharing, as well as his inspiration, which I feel like he's giving forth. I feel really grateful for Einat Wilf. I feel like she is
She's
she's like
incredible.
unstoppable. I feel incredibly grateful for President Herzog.
Mhm.
I feel like he has sort of stepped in to be the heart of Israel's leadership in these days. I feel like he and his wife Michal, or First Lady Michal, have been visiting with all of the families of those who are being held in captivity,
Yes.
and they've invited them to the president's house, and I feel like that's made a difference. I feel incredibly grateful for people like Mati Friedman,
Mhm.
who's been like not only an incredible journalist, but sharing the story. Gil Troy, who I believe is writing the Who Is series that we have here in America with American.
Oh,
I think he's doing one for Israel, which I'm so excited about. I feel incredibly grateful for, oh my gosh, I feel like my list goes on and on. But just all of the, I mean, I feel grateful for every 18 through 21-year-old in Israel that is like courageously and bravely putting on an IDF uniform and working to protect, the people of Israel, as well as the Miluim, like, right, those reservists and
yeah.
their
Mhm.
families that are, have spent more than 6 months, of the last 565, 50, 550, 560 days, leaving their families, leaving their jobs, leaving their work and their careers and everything, and fighting in that first battlefield.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, there's like no end to
Yeah,
Esti.
there's a
Sorry.
lot of superheroes, and I think we come to know them in the past couple of years. We've seen
Right,
like so
right.
many of them.
Oh, and Esti, by the way, like the I mean, the captives that have been released that
Oh
are
yeah, yeah,
unstoppable. Like I mean, a Gomberger, Eli Sharabi, like there's no, uh, it is unbelievable to me
yeah,
what they have survived, right? Like, I mean, even when I've read their stories or listened to their stories, how they survived is otherworldly to me, right? It is an extraordinary act of faith, of survival, of endurance, of perseverance, I mean, they survived the unimaginable, and then they came out and they're fighting for the
yeah.
others still
Mhm.
being held in captivity, and they're telling their story and they're vulnerable and they're telling of it, but they keep on going. Like, I just feel like if they can do that, there's nothing that we over here can't do. And also, you had asked, like, Rachel,
Goldberg Pauling.
or Cullen, like
Yeah,
she she followed through with her word even after Hirsch's, death. She is still fighting the fight for all of those being held in captivity with passion and rigor and commitment and devotion. And she's not alone. There are so many other of those families of hostages or captives that are fighting for each other. I just think, like, we are part of the most beautiful and extraordinary people. But what this moment of time is really testing us. And I
it
think,
is, and yeah, a lot of people are proving themselves, to the extreme.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
incredible. Yeah.
for sure. And by the way,
Um.
to those who haven't yet, it's never too late.
Yes. Yeah. Go to
Join
Israel. Do
us.
good things. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Israel. Hi, join us.
Oh, yes.
I know. Uh,
Um. So you've been to Israel many times, and even in the past year or so, you've gone a few times. What is your favorite spot in Israel? Like a place that makes you happy when you go there?
um, Sorry, I got a quick ad on my screen. There are so many places. One, I love Kinneret.
Oh,
It's such a like unlikely thing, but it just makes me
yeah.
so happy. Like, it's calm and I love the water, and I don't know, it just feels super lovely. Um, I also like, um, I don't know, I like a stopover or day trip in mm, Esti Vineyards, sort of Zichron Yaakov. So
Oh, okay.
I think that's like a fun day trip. But for sure, my favorite place is Jerusalem.
Yeah.
For me, Jerusalem feels like home. Um, when I'm like in the Emek Rephaim area, or really, like, it doesn't really matter where in Jerusalem. There's a passion. There's sort of like this religious center that I love, there's a pressure that I feel like is exciting. There's a strength, I think, in the people. There's drive, there's passion. I just love, I mean, to me, being like walking down Emek Rephaim,
Mhm.
I think that it's probably the place in this world that makes me feel most at home.
Oh,
Hmm.
that's great.
Yeah.
Um,
We have a funny thing in our family because, you know, Gideon and I both love Jerusalem. Noah loves Tel Aviv. Like, you know, it's like
yeah.
a funny thing. Noah's in Tel Aviv now, actually, working at a startup, which is really fun.
Oh,
And like,
cool.
there's nothing that makes her happier than like knowing all the streets and all the places in Tel Aviv.
I'm sure it's great. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Uh, what is like your most memorable conversation with an Israeli?
Okay, this is funny. When we were there for Thanksgiving this past year,
Mhm.
one of the things that was really interesting was we had back-to-back Thanksgivings. So we had a Thursday night Thanksgiving in Israel, and then we had a Friday Shabbat Thanksgiving. And the Thursday Thanksgiving, we were with our friends Elliot and Rebecca, and they had about like 30 people over for dinner on Thanksgiving night. And actually, it was funny. They told me to bring, or they told Rafi to bring the cranberries, like cans of
Mhm.
cranberries, which they don't have there. And like, it's so hard to carry like things. Actually, we didn't even get cans. I think we got like the bags of cranberries. So wherever we were, we had to keep like putting them back in like the refrigerator. And it was like I didn't want to mess up Thanksgiving dinner by like forgetting the cranberries. So that was actually like a funny thing. But when we got to the dinner, we went around the table, and usually, when you're around the table, especially when you're with a whole bunch of people that don't necessarily know each other, it always makes sense to like go around and have people introduce themselves. So we did that. We went around and had people introduce themselves. And one of the things that I noticed, and this is the first time in my life that I've had this experience, but people were sort of introducing themselves by like where they were from and what they did, how they spend their days, sort of what
Yeah.
they did. And the adults are typically the more interesting human beings, I think, at the table, we'll talk about like what they do and a little bit about that. But this time we got to the middle of the table, and that was where like the 18 through 22-year-olds were. And the first 18-year-old said like, I'm blank, I'm from blank. And right now I am working on Iron Dome in Jerusalem.
Oh.
And I was like, I don't even know what to say. And she said basically like her job is to keep the people of Jerusalem safe. Like, right, she shoots down those missiles and things that are coming our way. And then the next person went, and she said like, my job is I'm stationed on the edge of Har Harmon,
Mhm.
and when our soldiers are going in to Lebanon, they wear me as a third eye on their uniforms.
Oh.
And I was like, so she said, so when they're looking in different like places and homes and like I'm also watching.
Yeah.
So I can help them navigate and help them to understand when there's trouble. And I thought like that's amazing. And the next person went and she's like, I'm working for intelligence. I can't say anything more. And it was this moment where I realized that like the existence of Israel is like resting upon the shoulders or being held by this like basically like 18, 19, 20, 21
Yeah.
year old, and
That's
that was really amazing to me. So I would say like that was probably one of my most like wow moments. And then the next night at the next Shabbat Thanksgiving dinner, I was talking to an old friend of mine, and he has 5 kids, and he asked me how I feel about like, after Maya goes to college in 2 years, that I'll be an empty nester. And I said to him like, you're also an empty nester. Like, why are you saying that? That's not nice. And he said, actually, and I think this is interesting because his family moved from California to Israel
Mhm.
during the pandemic.
Oh.
And they took their 5 teenagers and they were like, okay, here we go. And he still works in California. So he goes back and forth a lot. Um, but he said to me something so interesting. He said, "Oh, it's really different in Israel. We don't sort of become empty nesters. Like we don't lose our children in the same way because our kids are always coming back.
Right.
They come back for Shabbat dinners. They come back when they're in the army. They like still use our home as their base. They come back when they're in college. They come, it just is one of those things. And I turned to Rafi and I'm like, we need to move to Israel. We'll never lose our children.
Yeah. Also in Israel, I think like people normally live with their parents until they're like late 20s or so.
Yeah.
That's how it's always been, I feel like. I mean, I think maybe in recent years they move out a little bit earlier than that, but still like in their 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very different.
And it's also a smaller country. So
Yeah.
people do come home for shopping.
Yeah, everything is much closer. It's not like in here, this person lives in Colorado, the other person lives in California, and
I know. Actually, Esti, with our guys group at the Soul Center, we just read the book, The Genius of Israel, which was, for those who read Startup Nation, Genius of Israel was a second book. And one of the things that it said in one of their chapters, and I thought this was actually super beautiful, was that, that spirit on like the Wednesday leading up to Thanksgiving of like everybody returning home.
Yeah.
That in Israel that happens every week on Friday.
Yeah, every Friday. Yeah.
That like there's like there's something in the air that people are they're like heading home.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's such a powerful thing.
Yeah, like the whole family thing in Israel is very like sacred, I think.
Yeah.
It's very different here in the US. Like when I came here, like, and I got to know people and they're like, oh, you're not talking to your mom every day? Like you don't talk to your, like, what? Like, I live like thousands of miles away. I talk to my family every single day. Like to me, like not talking to them is like, it's weird. I wish I could go visit them every week, but
right. Every Friday. Here we are.
Yes.
Gee, I need to
all right.
So I could talk to you for hours though.
One last thing.
Sometime.
Very short thing. What is your favorite Hebrew word?
Oh. Maybe yalla.
Yalla. All right. So with that, we'll end. Thank you so much, Rabbi, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure talking to you as always.
I know. I feel like I would love to do this really like all day, every day. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening. Until next time.